welcome to Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football. I am one of your post-game hosts, Desmond. I'm here with my partner, Dre. Please like and subscribe. Share the video out on social media. It helps grow the channel. Also, while you're at it, subscribe to Mark's main channel, The Voice of College Football, and also join his Patreon, and you can join his Discord where you can talk not only college football, but NFL football 24/7, 365. Dre, how we doing, my friend?
Good, good. It's rivalry week, so I mean it's exciting, and definitely, I'm chomping at the bit to get to Saturday night.
It is an interesting, I mean, it's huge. It's rivalry week, Michigan State. A huge game as far as that rivalry goes, but an interesting point spread as far as the game goes. So I'm looking at, I think this might be on M Live, but the point spread is Michigan is a 22 and a half point favorite in that game. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, on paper, Michigan should, be a couple touchdown difference versus Michigan State. Fact of the matter is, Michigan State has not been a good football team this year. They've have had problems, on their off with their offense. I mean, Peyton Thorne has not been as consistent as he was last year. Part of that being, Jalen Reed, not being available early in the year, who's his favorite target. So they've kind of it's taken a while to kind of get the offense, in order. Of course, losing Kenneth Walker III, who was the catalyst of their offense, and you see what he's done in the NFL thus far. He's really hit the ground running, no pun intended, in the NFL as well. So I mean,
did you really just throw that out there?
Right. So I mean, they had to adjust an offense, and they've been trying to find their way. But the biggest thing has been their defense. I mean, their defense has been one of the worst in the country, especially their secondary, which was their Achilles heel last year. On the flip side, for Michigan, Michigan is clicking on all cylinders. Our offense is, is going pretty well. We got the probably, if not the best, or definitely top two running back tandem in the country with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. We have a dynamic young quarterback, and why am I drawing a blank? JJ, sorry, JJ McCarthy.
Are you okay?
Sometimes it's funny, man. Like I get McCaffrey and McCarthy mixed up in my mind. Like Dylan McCaffrey. Like I know the difference, but it's like they're so close that McCaffrey part.
I feel like if there's one person on the team that you would not forget their names, it's the
normally I say
quarterback.
JJ. Normally I say JJ, but I was afraid I was going to say McCaffrey, so that's why I paused a little bit. But JJ, and defensively, we've had guys step up throughout the year to really assert themselves as being difference makers. Guys like Oki, Mike Moore is taking a step forward. So, Moulton on secondary, DJ Turner, Carlson at the linebacker position. You're just seeing guys everywhere stepping up and improving throughout the season. So Michigan's playing their best ball as of now, going to the bye week, and MSU really was kind of limping into the bye week. They got through and survived a overtime game against Wisconsin, but Wisconsin's not a good football team either. So kind of hard to get a good gauge on has MSU truly fixed some of their issues. I mean, they did give up 28 points to a Wisconsin offense that's not really good at all. Graham Mertz, who's a turnover machine. So maybe they really didn't change much at all. We'll find out on Saturday. But to the point of the point spread, I kind of want to give the context to what I'm about to say. Despite all those things, look, this is this is a very hated rivalry. And no matter what team, both teams tend to play up. Typical years when Michigan's down. When Michigan was down under Rich Rod and Brady Hawk, I mean, definitely State took it to Michigan a couple of times, but for the most part, Michigan shows up to play, and State does as well, no matter what their records are. I remember in 2016 where Michigan was having a great season. If you guys recall, that was the season where Michigan went in, I think, with one loss versus Ohio State, right? And they lost an overtime game. Ohio State, I think it was 1-3 or 2-3, if I'm not mistaken. And Ohio State ended up going to the college football playoff, and Michigan, I think, finished 10-2, 11-2 season. But either way, my point is that MSU was terrible that year. That's when they had Tyler O'Connor We thought that Michigan would go in there and destroy them. It was only like a 16-7 point win. If you remember that those extra 2 points was like a late last minute 2 point conversion that Jabril Peppers ran back the other way. But that was a close game from a scoring standpoint, final score standpoint. So you just never know, man. I actually, if I was to, I will bet the under. I will bet MSU to cover the spread. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think they're going to show up to play, but I think it's going to be one of those games where MSU may have that initial jolt of energy, if you will, to start the game. But Michigan will just kind of wear them out. And I think they will probably win by 14 points or so.
Wow, that's interesting. So you think the Spartans will cover. To me, this game has the makings of a potential blowout.
Sure.
I think with the way that Michigan is playing coming into this game, that they are playing their best football yet of the season. And I just think the things that Michigan does well, it's going to be very difficult for Michigan State, and vice versa. I with Michigan State, they have struggles everywhere. I think Jaden Reed is a really good wide receiver, but I also see the Michigan defensive backs, especially DJ Turner, coupled with the pass rush of minimizing his impact on the game. I think he's their best player. I could be wrong, but I think Reed is their best player. So
Keon Coleman has showed flashes of being a real playmaker on the other side as well. I mean, to be honest, I think if there's anything you want to say about their offense, they do have, to me, when it's all said and done, 2 NFL receivers, and Jalen Reed and Keon Coleman. Now you can take out of that what you will. I'm not saying they're going to be some great players at the next level, but I definitely see NFL talent. Now, after that, it's pretty scarce, right? But they do have playmakers, and Peyton Thorne. At the end of the day, we saw all last year. They were so freaking frustrated that it's like against Michigan, against other teams, I'll tune in, of course, to see how State is doing, and of course, root against them. But I swear, and it happened last week versus Wisconsin. You know, when all else fails, that Peyton Thorne is going to throw the ball to Jalen Reed. When all else fails, that stupid little and the broadcast loves to bring up when they were high school teammates. Like he's going to look for Jalen Reed. So come hell to high water, do not let Jalen Reed beat you if you're in a situation that he can. And but no, to your point, no, Jalen Reed's their best player, but Keon Coleman is a playmaker.
yeah, I think they will be good. Let's bring on the man himself, Mark Rogers. Mark, what's up?
I'm good. How's it going?
Good. We were just talking that so Dre thinks that Michigan State is going to cover. I think 22.5 was the spread that I saw on M Live, but I had mentioned that I think this game, although I do understand the rivalry piece of it, I think this game has the makings of a blowout. I think Michigan's defense is playing at a very high level. I think, especially, I think that pass rush if they're not elite yet, they are certainly trending towards it. And I just think with the offensive struggles of Michigan State and the way that Michigan likes to play their ball control offense, that it's just the Michigan State offense is going to have less possessions and then also playing against a rested, really talented defense. So I think this has the makings of kind of getting out of hand. But what are your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, we'll know if Michigan State's able to stay in this game or perish the thought, be able to pull off like a ridiculous, nobody would ever predict it upset that Mel Tucker definitely has something on Jim Harbaugh. Because otherwise, I just don't see how these two teams are in the same zip code one way or the other. Michigan's too good. They're hitting on all cylinders. And I heard some of Dre's take, and I'm right there as well. First time I saw Michigan State this year was when they went out to Washington, and that's pretty much what they had going for them was Peyton Thorne running around all over the place because he was getting chased in the backfield. He couldn't set up the throw, and Jaden Reed and Keon Coleman making plays. Them Peyton Thorne improvising, him running around playing, you know, backlot football and getting the ball to those guys was all they had. That's all they had.
Yeah.
I don't see that working against
No.
Michigan. You're going.
No,
Peyton Thorne's going to get himself hurt if he does that against Michigan.
right. The only thing that concerns me is, and granted, a big part of it, a humongous part of it was Kenneth Walker III, K9. But what MSU did expose about the Michigan defense last year was, in a way they, quite frankly, came back in the game and won the game, was they kept an up-tempo offense, right? And they didn't allow the previous defensive coordinator, Mike McDaniel, to do his typical substitutions. And it kept Michigan's defense on their heels. And there's a couple times that
Michigan got some penalties there too.
Penalties as well. Mm-hmm. And that's where the game really started to change. You know, once Michigan, couldn't get their footing, and K9 broke a couple runs, and they never could quite get their same mojo. Because you got to remember, Michigan really was dominating that football game at the beginning for the most part. Of course, it's a questionable call. I mean, I of course still believe there was a fumble when they didn't strip Peyton Thorne, and that should have been a touchdown. But whatever. Fact of the matter is, that was a big part of it. The Michigan defense unable to recover due to the up-tempo offense of MSU. So I would assume, and am curious about how Michigan combats that this year. Because that seems to be Mel Tucker's calling card. Whenever his team is down, he loves to go 4 on 4th down. He loves to keep constant pressure on the opposing team's defense. And I would assume, especially, once again being the underdog, that he's going to do the same thing. And now we have a different defensive coordinator, same philosophy, and Jesse Minter. And how does he combat that? Did he look at the film last year, which I'm sure he did, and is he prepared for that situation to not get caught in that same type of conundrum? That does concern me a little bit, and I'm curious how they choose to combat that.
I mean, I would. I don't want to go too far, but it would be just a bit egregious if Minter essentially falls into the same situation just because it happened last year and you're coming off a bye week. Like, you had no one to prepare for last week except for Michigan State. So I think, and sometimes those things do happen, but it happened multiple times last year. So I would imagine that if there's one number one priority for Minter and that defense, it's being keenly aware of those situations. And usually you're going to see the up tempo, especially when you get, number one, a big first down. Usually that is when a team will like to go fast and try to catch you off guard, especially if it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, where you have typically your pass rushers in, and now on a first down, we want to try to run against those pass rushers. But I think that's where with Michigan, they're in a really good spot because Mike Morris is one of their better defensive linemen and better pass rushers, but he plays the run really well too, and Mozzie Smith and Graham as well. I was going to say 55, and I'm like, I cannot keep forgetting his name, but so I think that will definitely help Michigan. But yeah, that has got to be focus number one or maybe number two of being just, hey, we need to stop the run just because that's just what you need to do. And then number two is just being aware of the hurry up, the up tempo, and not getting caught substituting and getting guys on and off.
And number three, you have to be prepared. To me, when it comes to MSU or Mel Tucker's philosophy, you got to be prepared to play 4 downs. I think on most Saturdays, most coaches, they have more of a conventional way of, even as underdogs for the most part, they have a conventional way of approaching the game. Mel Tucker has shown, especially at MSU, that he loves to go for on 4th down. He loves to put, and I sound like a broken record, but I can't stress it enough. I've seen it countless times, of course, against Michigan last year, the Washington game, any game that his team is trailing or kind of, maybe definitely not the favorite, he is going to be super aggressive, and I saw that Blake name mentioning throwing in trick plays. I remember against Indiana last year, they had like a tight end pass or something like that. I was trying to remember what they did, but they did some kind of trick play with the tight end last year. And I believe he did pass the ball to. Actually, I think the tight end did pass the ball to Peyton Thorne on like some kind of reverse play. And that was one of the things that sparked one of their last minute drives versus Indiana when they beat Indiana last year. And granted, that's some of the regression that you've seen with MSU this year. You've seen they won a lot of last minute or single digit score games, and they were winning on a very thin line of margin, basically, right? And this year, you're seeing that they're not able to really survive that thin margin of error, and so I expect those type of things from Mel Tucker. And from a mentality standpoint, this defense has to expect to play 4 downs and understand that MSU is not going to go away. That's one thing I have come to respect. I hate it, but respect about the Spartans is that under Mel Tucker, no matter how the score looks, for the most part, they're going to continue to attack. The only team, and I know Mark's going to love this, that has really decimated the Spartans the last 2 years is Ohio State, where it didn't matter how much they wanted to fight, they just couldn't keep up at all. So, and the thing about Michigan is that even though Michigan is way better than OSU on paper, like Ohio State is, the way they approach the game stylistically, I believe, may not allow for that same disparity in score. OSU, we know how Ryan Day is. He has no guards on his play calling. He's trying to constantly put up points, constantly. We know Jimmy, he's about getting a win. And you saw that. Look at the difference against the Iowa game. Granted, Ohio State was at home, but there's some people like, well, see, look what OSU did to Iowa compared to what Michigan did from a score differential standpoint. Well, you have to actually watch the games to see, how these teams really dominate and how they actually play versus Iowa. So I think that's something to also to consider as well. That was a lot.
No, you're good. They definitely have some very different styles. And like you mentioned, Dre, as far as the 4th downs, Michigan State's gone for it, if I'm correct on this, 14 times in, what have they played, 6 games, something like that? I mean, that's a pretty, it's probably going to be a lot more after this week.
For sure.
Go ahead, Mark. Looked like you were about to say something.
7 games, so going for it 14 times. I don't even know how that compares to teams across the
average.
Nation. But when you make that comparison, like Dre just brought up with Ohio State playing Iowa this past weekend, of course, Michigan took care of that game a couple weekends ago, and then Michigan's got Michigan State. The Buckeyes have already played. Penn State is Ohio State's opponent. We're going to have now 3 opponents, and people are going to start, including us, start playing that game of, who looked better against what opponent, and that lineup of opponents is going to swell here in the next few weeks, which is an interesting comparison. And just every game's different, every matchup's different, but there's going to be some conversation, whether it's valid or not, to compare these teams and how they played against the same opponents.
Yeah, and I don't think there's going to be a game where Michigan scores more than Ohio State on a specific opponent. Now, I don't think that means that they had any less game control or any, it means they dominated any less, just because, like you mentioned, Dre, the styles are just different. Like when Ryan Day gets rolling, he wants to throw the ball, he wants to get downfield, be aggressive. And Michigan style is that run first, and for good reason, right? They have 2 terrific running backs that are rolling. Offensive line's doing a great job. So it's just going to be different. But yeah, like you said, Mark, it's now we're starting to get to that trend of common opponents, and that number is going to get bigger and bigger. So we shall see. Go ahead.
But overall, it turns this weekend. Look, Michigan has no excuse to lose this football game. They are the better football team. They are playing the better football. Everything is going their way. And there is this underlying banter that always happens this time of the year.
Underlying?
Well, not underlying.
I was gonna say, I would say that's
Let me
pretty
rephrase.
front and center. That is
Let me
that is
rephrase.
overlying.
Right. Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
You have a ton of banter this time of the year, especially, and it goes both ways. I get so tired of Spartan fans and media people. I kind of see some media people who cover the Spartans, and they always want to star and retweet, some of the trash things some former Michigan trash talk certain former Michigan players to do, like Taylor Lewan, big inappropriate pictures, and things that Braylon Edwards has said on his media outlets and stuff like that. And it's like your players talk a lot of trash too. They both talk trash, and Spartans really try to make it seem like, oh my God, all you guys do is talk trash. You're pompous, and this is why we beat you because you're entitled. And it's like, well, first of all, the trash talking goes both ways. So let's stop being holier than thou and act like you're so innocent. You're not. And as long as it's all in good fun, it's all that matters. But what has happened, well, I will say, what has happened for previous years, especially under Mark Antonio, and I will give Mel Tucker credit. I think he's been able to kind of carry on this underdog mentality, and he's 2-0 versus Michigan thus far, is creating a mindset for the Spartans that Michigan does respect us, the world doesn't respect us. They think that this team is better than us. They're just born better than us. So let's show on Saturday who we are. And it has galvanized them on most of the time we've played them, and I think what Michigan has failed to do in previous years, not saying it will be this way this year, is matching that intensity. Not saying that they didn't want to go in the game and win it. They always want to go and win. Everybody wants the Paul Bryant Trophy, but matching that hatred, right? In extreme desire to win and to prove a point. And I would say there's been seasons, guys, where I have worried about that. Does Michigan have that same level of tenacity and approach to this game? This year, I have zero concern. I think from the beginning of this year, it started with if you guys recall, it started with the preseason media day in Indianapolis, and both Harbaugh and I think Kate McNamara, believe either Eric Hall or Mike Morris, one of them, well, I think all three of them mentioned the desire to beat MSU. They actually said we need to beat Michigan State this year. We talked about that on the show, during that time. Like they brought that up during the preseason media questioning. So that tells you what the mindset has been about this year. It tells you that they realize the urgency. They're down, Harbaugh's down 0-2 versus Mel Tucker. There is an urgency to win this football game. So, I'm not worried about it at all. I think Michigan's going to come out there with a head on fire, and they're going to try to come out there to prove a point. But that is something to always recognize. It's that the motivations going into this game for both teams.
Absolutely. Well, I want to get to this question next, but I actually checked out a small clip. I didn't get to see the whole thing of Let's Toast Media. He had a video kind of the preview of the game, but he mentioned that this game is going to be Michigan State Super Bowl, so they are going to absolutely be up and ready to roll. So I agree with you, Dre, as far as I think Michigan is going to come out right, hair on fire, playing just intense, ready to execute. But I think Michigan State's going to do the same. Now, what does an A+ game for Michigan versus an A+ game versus Michigan State look like? It probably is still at least a 2-touchdown win for Michigan. But will Michigan State be able to sustain that level of play? Who knows? And what does an early mistake look like, right? Because Peyton Thorne, he's thrown, I think, 7 interceptions this season. So what does a pick in the first quarter look like? I mean, I can imagine night game for at Michigan, that place is going to be rocking if something like that happens.
Yeah, and you know what it comes down to, Des? This is one of those games where you just want to put your foot on their neck. I mean, to be as blunt as I can, put your foot on their neck as quick as possible, and to essentially sustain that, intensity for throughout the game. You really do. I mean, like because at least probably through the third quarter. Like you really constantly have to put that pressure on because MSU is going to come out there, ready to play, and they're going to fight. But because Michigan is so much better. At least last year, like I on paper last year, Michigan was a better team. I thought Michigan was a better team going into the game, even after they lost. I still thought Michigan was a better team.
Mm-hmm.
But at least last year, MSU had this. I don't want to use the word magic, but they had this formula of finding ways to stay in football games and grind it out. And if they had a window to win games they weren't supposed to win or 50-50 shot, they were able to do it. Like I said, with that razor thin margin of error, right? On that high wire act, essentially. This year is not going their way at all. Then also had, I don't want to use the word generational. That's pretty far-fetched, but a really, really, really good running back in K9 last year. So it's a lot different. They don't have nearly that same winning formula. In fact, they're not winning much at all this year. All right, just being honest. But you still just never know, man, because both these teams, like you said, MSU, this is their Super Bowl. They have their season is essentially over in terms of winning anything significant. Can't win a conference. Maybe they can. Mathematically, I think they're pretty much done.
That's not happening.
Not happening. But can't win a conference. Not going to play in the Big Time Bowl. This is it, right? So I don't know, man. But I just think Michigan just has too much for them.
Yeah, for me, all the motivation factors check off on Michigan's side in regards to avoiding an upset. This not being Rutgers coming in for a noon game, traveling to Maryland after beating them 5 or 6 straight years by 3 or 4 touchdowns, that sort of thing. Because regardless of how much better Michigan is right now, significantly better, they just are. Better football team, better program. They got a championship to play for. So that should keep them laser focused first and foremost, that they've got a mission. We need to get better, better, and better, and better every week, put our, foot on the throat and keep going until we get to Columbus, number one. Number two, it's Michigan State. So even if they beat Michigan State 10 years in a row, I would think, depending on the player, there might still be extra motivation or something extra there. There certainly is for the fan bases. There certainly is for the folks that you would know much better than me in the state of Michigan, because I've never lived there, of regardless of what the records are, the past history, that there's going to be something extra there. And then the third one is what we talked about, is that Michigan State has had success. So you're Michigan, you're better, you're playing for a championship. They're an also ran, but they've beaten you the last 2 years. And if you want to go back before that, if you've been around the state, growing up in the state, been in high school, then 10 out of 14? You want to do something about that and do it emphatically.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Jim Harbaugh is typically not a run up the score type coach. I could definitely see him running the score up against Michigan State. Maybe if there's only 2 possible games that would ever happen. This one in Ohio State, and I'm not sure yet. He might be just kind of business as usual. Hey, we expected to win. No need to try to embarrass the opponent. But I feel like a little part of him, especially after losing the last 2, he's yet to beat Mel Tucker. I could easily see this being one of those games where potentially he does kind of run it up a little bit. We'll see.
I'll continue to harp on the preseason, the media day before the season started. Just the fact, you got to think about how Harbaugh, how him and his players like to talk at media day and pretty much before any kind of game. It's rare where they really, at least before the game, they really talk directly about an opponent in terms of their motivations. A lot of times it's very bland, measured, respectful, but
the PR training, that's
right. The fact that they said it verbatim, we know we need to beat those guys. I think that was Eric Goff. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that was Eric Goff's exact words. We know we need to beat those guys. Harbaugh making it a point to say, we need to beat Michigan State. Really, I think the first time he's ever really said it like that. It like just putting it out there. No, back way of saying it, just outright putting it bluntly. We understand the urgency of beating those guys. I think even one Michigan player said, something about an MSU drill, almost similar to Ohio State drill. Someone even said something like that. So I think this is one of those special years where, like, they're pretty pissed off about last year. Look, they had a better season, but that loss to MSU was kind of like a bitter taste in their mouth, right? Because they were the better team. And, like, even though it all worked out in the end, it's still like, hold on a second, we shouldn't have lost that football game. And I believe that is a motivation, like you said, Des, to not only win, but to prove a point. You were never better than us to begin with.
Well, and if everything plays out exactly the same last year, except you end up beating Michigan State, you're the 1 seed and you're playing Cincinnati in the first round.
Not different.
And you're probably walking to a national championship, right? Like, I mean, because you look at even how Alabama ran the ball against Cincinnati, you were much better of a running team than Alabama was. So then you're talking, you got one shot to win it. That changes a lot, right? So I'm sure that comes into play as far as this game as well, of trying to really put it to Michigan State. I mean, it's a rivalry, and I think too for Jim Harbaugh he could use another win as far as with his rivals. I know, obviously last year was a terrific year. That was still, if you throw Penn State in there, 2-1, as far as, the rivalries go. But you definitely want to get this one. Definitely want to get it.
No, I think that's a really good point that you just made, because we'll never know. And it's easy to make the argument, because the argument's obvious, that even if Michigan gets lined up against Cincinnati, they lose the national championship game, because Alabama and especially Georgia, of course, just appear to be flat out better. So I would never argue that Michigan was going to win the national championship if they had that 1-4 situation. But all three of us do know how situations change and confidence levels change and scenarios can change. And again, I would never make this argument, but it's worth at least mentioning, I think, that in that 1-4 matchup, Michigan's maybe a different team 10 or 12 days later playing a national championship game with not the deer in the headlights. This is our first time ever on the big stage of playing in a playoff game. No, we got a playoff win under our belts. Say they won that game, 31-17. And now we got confidence. We got mojo. We've done it. Okay, we're used to this. We know where we are. We know we belong. And now they've got a shot at the winner of the other game. I'm not going to in any way. Again, we watched Georgia play Michigan. Not argue that. But things do change. And I reminded somebody the other day, rematches, and this wouldn't have been a rematch, but just a different situation with the same two teams. Sometimes we just think that if one team beats another team, that it's obvious that they're better than them, like all the time. Anytime they would play, they're better than them. History tells us otherwise, though, that the rematch is, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't know that anyone's gone through the numbers top to bottom, but if you look at bowl games in which teams had played during the regular season or postseason games versus a regular season matchup when that happens, or a conference championship game that was played in the regular season, I'd be willing to say, because I have measured this at times to look at, let's say, conference championship games, roughly half the time, 60% of the time, a team would get whipped, beaten down in the regular season, and you would think that they had no shot in the rematch, and they won the game.
Yeah, and I see where you're coming from, Mark. I mean, and we know it was clear as day Georgia was a better football team last year, and it's no point of trying to adjudicate, what if that happened. I will say, matchup wise, Michigan would have been a better matchup for Alabama. I still think Alabama was a better football team last year, but Alabama's defense wasn't like Georgia's defense. I'll put it that way. You just never know what could have happened, right? But anyway, for this particular year, man, it's one of those things where, I mean, you can argue that Michigan team, and I wasn't willing to say this earlier this year, but they may be better than they were last year. They're
Oh, I
certainly
think they are.
different. They're
I think
certainly
they
different.
absolutely are.
You
I
know,
don't even
and
think that's a stretch. I think that's yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think part of it comes with success, right? Like having the year, because last year they were coming off the COVID year and it was not a great year. So at this point last year, it was almost, I don't want to say it was a surprise, maybe to people outside of the Michigan program that they were, undefeated at that point and kind of rolling. To whereas this year, I feel like it's more of an expectation. Like we expected this and we expect to win this Saturday too. Like I'm sure they're not expecting a close ball game by any stretch. So I think sometimes having the success that you had the previous year, and a lot of these guys were on last year's roster. So to be able to continue that into this year, I think it changes things. Some guys start to play with more confidence. A guy like Cornelius Johnson, like I feel like even though I still am hoping for a bit more from him, I think he's playing more confident this year than he did last year. I mean, a guy like Ronnie Bell wasn't playing at all last year with the injury in the first game. So, yeah, I definitely think Michigan is way better, this year because I mean, you could make a case Michigan should be 2-1 maybe. Like I mean, you could make potentially that case.
If we look at any good college football team from one year to the next, they always seem like they're not going to be as good because obviously they're losing players going to the NFL, and we don't know how much the other players are going to improve and develop. But I'm with Des. I don't think there's any question this team's better. And you guys have talked about it in the past where when you've got superstars, maybe they get relied on too much. And that pass rush was going to come from Aiden and David Ajabo, and that's it. And it just seems like they can come from any direction now with all sorts of different layers of players. Daxton Hill was obviously a big loss, but they've made up for it. And on the offensive side, for as good as that offensive line was last year,
they're better.
The center from Virginia,
He's All-American.
Tommy.
Oh.
Yep.
I need the name in front of me to pronounce it correct, but he's a monster. He's a man. He's great. He's a great center. And the difference between Haskins and Corum was Haskins, tremendous player, did his job really good at what he did. And I think it was just the security of Harbaugh knowing what he had with Haskins and Corum was more.
Mark, he wasn't a home run threat. No,
yeah,
Haskins
exactly.
was
He's not the home run threat, but you didn't know that Corum could be the 30 carry guy. Right. So
Correct.
Corum was an in space guy, a periphery guy that we got the ball to in space and got his 12 carries. But now he's proven that his ceiling obviously higher than Haskins, and he can not only just be the guy in space, but he can be the workhorse. I think that's an upgrade.
Well, I'll argue, and this is not to bash Hassan Haskins. He had a really good career in Michigan, was a workhorse. But I'll argue both our running backs this year are better than Hassan Haskins.
Yeah.
Donovan Everett, especially when it's all said and done, because he's young, he's still getting better, will be a better player. I think we talked about, I think last week, Des, that we think that Donovan Everett can be better than both of those guys when it's all said and done. Mm-hmm. So, another thing too, guys, I think what you're seeing is, and I'll never forget, there's an image that went out that was all on social media where right after the Georgia-Michigan game in the playoff last year of, I believe it was Mike Morris, J.J. McCarthy, and I want to say Blake Corum, and they were all watching. It's like someone took a picture behind them. They were watching Georgia celebrate, just kind of on the sideline with their helmets in their hands. And I think what you're seeing this year is not only a team that's better, but a team that had a taste of being in a playoff, and they're legitimately hungry. Like, we were so close. And why would you not think that, right? Once you get in the playoff, you only have to win 2 games. 2 games, and you're a national champion. I feel like they genuinely, in that locker room, especially the leaders from that team, the Corums of the world, Mike Morris, J.J. McCarthy, Ronnie Bell, who didn't even get to play last year, but he was there, feel like they're going for the national championship. That's what they're going for, and I think they feel like they have a chance. And I will argue, based on how they're playing in the landscape of college football, and we'll talk about this more as we continue to get down to that time of the year, that they have a legitimate chance to win it all this year. And so I think from a week-to-week standpoint, they're not going to really have much drop-offs. You're going to see that tenacity and focus because they can taste it and they want to go for it all.
And there's another reason they're better. Let me try to put my finger on it. What is it? Oh, yeah, quarterback. Yeah, that's right. That guy.
The 5-star the 5-star kid who runs probably a 4.5 40 and big arm. Yeah, I would definitely I would think he's got some type of impact in this game. That it's funny you say that because I think about. Go ahead.
Yes, I want you to hit on that. But before you guys do the whole quarterback thing, let's not act like Cade did not have a statistically good game last year for MSU.
Well, and that's actually what I was gonna say. Is this was the playing against the Michigan State defense was Cade by far his best statistical game that he had in his entire career. And Michigan State has not shown that they've improved on that poor pass defense. So I think there's an opportunity there to obviously take advantage of that. At the same time, I also taper my expectations a bit because when I would love for Jim Harbaugh to throw the ball, he usually does not. So I'm going to taper my expectations, but I do think that is an area that Michigan can definitely exploit against the Spartans.
If there's any one, I mean, look, they're really excited about having Xavier Henderson back, for their defense. And if there is one guy who does concern me on that MSU defense is Windeman. I can't say.
Windman. Yes, the defensive lineman from UNLV. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a heck of a player for them this year. He's been a turnover machine. I mean, he's getting forced fumbles. He's getting interceptions. He's been utilized all over the place for that defense. I mean, he was huge, a huge catalyst in their win versus Wisconsin. Had the game sealing, strip on a really good running back in Allen for Wisconsin. So if there's any one guy that they need to circle on their defense to protect JJ, he's the guy. So, it's not like they're totally devoid of talent. The problem with their defense is that their secondary it's been horrible for going on almost 2 years. It's what it is. I mean, dude, that's and their defensive coordinator. People, MSU fans want their defensive coordinator launched out of a cannon. That's just it is what it is. It's major problems over there, and a lot of it's due to their secondary. Now, to your point, Des. Michigan most likely will not purposely take advantage of that just due to their natural approach to the game. They're going to be run first. But it would behoove them to definitely take a few shots because, pretty much anybody who's wanted to pass the ball versus MSU has been able to do it. So if there was a get-right game or a game to experiment a little bit, this would be a game for JJ to maybe, grip and rip it a little bit. Not all day. No one is saying that. No one is saying 30 attempts or anything like that. But every now and then, especially if they are establishing their run game as effectively as they pretty much have done all year, definitely take some shots deep to your guys and see if this MSU defense can handle it.
Quick shameless plug here. Just released on the main channel a little Michigan State talk, setting up the big game from the Spartan side.
Ooh. It'll be it's I think. Like I said, I would love to see a couple deep shots, but I with just knowing Jim Harbaugh's track record, we're probably not going to see as many as we would like. Let's put it that way. I think. Go ahead.
It probably won't be as necessary, though. I think, especially if Michigan's able to run the ball as effectively as they normally do, it doesn't take a ton of them to keep the defense honest or just take advantage of them. It's just the MSU defense, especially the secondary, has been bad for a multitude of reasons. Talent is one. Health has been. They've had a ton of injuries. They seem to make a lot of mistakes in their assignments. Schematically, they seem broken. That's been a ton of things that I've heard from a lot of MSU fans. So it's a ton of concern. And Michigan, is so balanced offensively in terms of their weapons that you really don't know where they're going to hit you from. You know, they can hit you with Shoemaker, they can hit you with Cornelius Johnson, Rodney Bell, why for Roman Wilson, Donovan
Schoonmaker.
Edwards.
Don't forget about it. Old Scooney.
Yeah. So I mean, look, it's a plethora of ways that they can hit you offensively, even in the passing game. JJ with his legs. So I just think it's just too much for the MSU defense to do much, to try to combat.
Yeah, I took a look at last year's game, and it leads me to why Michigan threw as much as they did, because the run game got you. I mean, on 27 carries between Hassan Haskins and Blake, they had, was that just over? I mean, like 105, if that, 104. So not not the usual what Hassan and Blake, together did on a regular basis last year. So I don't foresee Michigan having a tough time running the ball the way they did, last year. I think they'll have more success than they did last year. So
I got a question for you too. I'm looking at our comment section, and people brought up the fact that Jaden Davis, who is a 5-star kid quarterback, will be at the game Saturday night. And I'm trying to remove my Michigan bias, which I think I'm pretty good at doing. Sometimes I think too much for some of my fellow fans liking. But if you're a 5-star kid and you watch Michigan play, seriously, a quarterback, what's the appeal schematically? Because I feel like this. I'm just being honest, and of course I want to wow Jaden Davis. I want him to commit on the spot. But I'm thinking, if I was a quarterback and I go to a Michigan football game, and I'm like, of course, everything else, right? The campus, the program tradition, the winged helmet, the stadium, amazing. Facilities, top tier, everything you can want, right? But schematically, what's really the appeal? Like, I am curious.
So my response to that would be winning, number one. I think that is always something that factors in.
Schematically.
Yeah, but recruiting is not a decision made just on who has the best schematics, because otherwise, Mike Leach would get every top, number one quarterback because he runs the air raid. They throw it all the time.
Right.
So yeah, schematically, I mean, JJ's leading the country in completion percentage. I think that's pretty good. And also too, I would imagine that, number one, like I said, winning, playing in big games, because that's essentially what winning leads to, is playing in big games, and just having, the eyeballs on your performance. And then also too, I mean, you're going to be at, the big house for Michigan State. I mean, that crowd's probably going to be the loudest it's going to be all season on Saturday. So, I mean, schematically, yeah, I mean, there's other offenses you could definitely go to throw it more. But I mean, also too, that leads potentially to mistakes. I look at a guy like Spencer Rattler, who ended up getting benched at Oklahoma and transferred out, right? Like that, that comes into play as well. Is, well, the more I throw it, the more opportunity I have to make a mistake. And even a tip ball, something that wasn't really my fault, that still goes on your stat sheet as an interception. And too many of those, you end up sitting on the bench wearing a baseball cap. So that would be my answer. Mark, what about you?
Great. I think you bring up an interesting next level question here, because beyond that, think about this. J.J. McCarthy is the most important player on this team, just like almost every other team in America, because he's the quarterback first and foremost. But beyond his tenure career at Michigan, he may be the most important player, because he is going to be the first example and the first opportunity that Jim Harbaugh has to recruit and sign a quarterback, have him be a superstar coming to the program, develop him, get him to the next level, and hopefully be a high draft pick and a success at the next level as a quarterback. And that could be a great selling point going forward.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and thank you guys. I love some of the comments and really good, thought on answers from our streamers. And I agree with you, Mark. I think JJ can be a tremendous case study and an example potentially for future recruits, especially if it goes well. And it's been it's taken us a while to get here. It's taken us a few years. We've had other high level recruited guys, Dylan McCaffrey's of the world, Joe Milton, what's Brandon Peters. We had some of those kids come in
John
here.
O'Corn.
John
Don't forget about
O'Corn.
him.
We've had a couple kids come in here who were highly recruited or at least respected. Shea Patterson, my gosh. And none of them have really kind of panned out or reached their potential at the collegiate level, let alone get to the NFL. But if JJ's able to be that first one, that would be like a really good selling point. And I wanted to kind of hit on some things I saw some people say that I thought was really good, a really good answer. Like Victor Rodriguez said, when Michigan runs a pro level system that will prepare you for the NFL, not flashy but efficient. And I think that's a great answer. And because that is a selling point. And I wasn't critiquing, U of M. I was genuinely curious, like if I was a 5-star quarterback, and I know everything else Michigan's going to blow out the water because they're top tier and all that stuff. Biggest stadium in the country, probably I think in the world actually, top tier facilities, college football royalty in terms of tradition, right? The winged helmet, all that stuff, right? Charles Woodson, the history, everything, right? But from a schematic standpoint, like, man, can I be successful here with my position in particular? And when you do look at it that way, in terms of preparation for success, that's a good way to look at it, that you're going to learn how to be a well-rounded quarterback as opposed to just a statistic flashy quarterback, if you will. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. And I think that's kind of the synopsis that a lot of people have said.
Yeah, and I think if JJ has a similar year, like, let's say the year kind of plays out similar as far as his stats go, and then he has a repeat of this next year, I think he's going to be in line to be the number one pick of the, what would that be, 2024 draft? So yeah, I mean
Shea Patterson was the number one pick. Shea Patterson was a number one pick.
That is very true. To the
the
Michigan
USFL.
Panthers. And he actually got traded or something, released,
He got cut.
benched,
That's it.
and
He
everything.
didn't even
Yeah,
last
it's
the
not
full
good.
season. A little too much golf. A little too much golf.
Pro football in Michigan is just not good.
Oh gosh, I think it's no, but overall, it's going to be a great atmosphere. It's one of those games where you're going to have alumni there. You're going to have clearly big time recruits who are going to be visiting your campus. And it is a nationally televised game, and it's a chance for once again Michigan to show who they are and continue to put up a really impressive performance and solidify themselves as there's a clear distinction between us and the other tiers in college football, right? And that's what I expect. I just think that MSU tends to have just be a weird pain in the butt sometimes, and sometimes.
Yeah.
And they should. But it's just that sometimes, on paper, these games don't always go the way that you would think they will go.
True. I just, this year to me feels different. Someone had mentioned an earlier comment, but just that they feel like this is one of the years that they can just tell that the Michigan players are not taking this game for granted and not just assuming they're just going to roll in there and win. They've got kind of that edge. So, and I agree with that. I think it looks different, and even like 2 years ago, and granted that was the COVID year, that was just so weird for that to happen. But at that point, the season was just kind of just off the rails at that point. Last year was a surprise because I did feel like Michigan was the better team. And even when we came on here post game, like, you were very upset. Obviously, you just lost a big game, but I mean, I vividly remember, like, listen, I think you guys were the better team. You still control your own destiny. You just got to take care of business, and you'll be good to go. But but yeah, to me this year just feels different to me. So
Yeah, you'll love this. Stardust said this coming by count 22. 557.
oh, I
You
see
see
it. Yeah. Since I saw Shay at a golf course pro shop and he bought a medium sized golf club, at that moment I knew we were screwed. That's pretty funny. That's actually pretty
that
funny.
is, and to context of why we keep bringing up golf and JJ, not JJ, I'm sorry, Shea Patterson. When Shea, what was it? Was that Shea's first year at Michigan? No,
Yes.
yeah, and Josh got no.
No,
It's
no,
the
no.
second year.
It was the
Josh
second year,
Gaddis'
but
first year.
Gaddis's first year,
Yeah.
and Gaddis's first basically media session. He after it was like some kind of like training camp early on. It was really early, and Gaddis is they're talking and they're like, oh, how does Shea look? He's like, oh, he looks pretty good. I was a little concerned because he played a lot of golf this summer. I didn't see him all that much, and I remember calling you saying that is not good. That's not good.
Dude, it's like, dude, what are you doing? I mean, like, it's a new offense, new offensive coordinator. Your offensive coordinator saying you're on a golf course.
It's got to be a lot of golf for him to say that
Yeah,
at the media session. That wasn't just he missed a meeting. That was I haven't seen this guy. I wasn't quite sure what he looked like because I haven't seen him. That was very concerning. And I remember calling you saying, what do you think Tua is doing right now this summer? I don't think he's on the golf course.
Can you imagine the conversation between Tua and Saban? Like, hey, coach.
Sorry, I missed our meeting. I was golfing 9 with Jerry Judy. Sorry.
Yeah, we had a quick 9.
Yeah.
Excuse me, son. I just the audacity. Like, your coach texts you. I think he said he even texted. He's been texting with them and stuff like that. Like, yeah, his phone number. Like, you just imagine, like, if your coach texts you, say, hey, man, where are you? I'm seeing you around. You want to? So these new plays I want to install this week. Oh yeah. Can I stop by your office after this quick 9 hole? It's like just the audacity. Like,
oh man, my heart would drop if my coach texts me, "Where are you?" I would be ready to.
Through
oh
the
my Lord!
Roof. And mind you, while I am sprinting to his
Right.
office,
Yeah,
I'm thinking about the hell of conditioning I have in front of me. You know what I'm saying? I'm about to be running my butt off. And I'm like, I'm probably, as I'm running, I'm thinking about all the gashers and stairs and all.
just the harm that's gonna come to my body. I'm so concerned.
Yes,
so concerned.
And don't let you be in a polo shirt. It looked like you were going.
Yeah, no. So before we go, we actually had Mike G says, did we do score predictions yet? We did not, Mike. So on our way out, we will do that. Dre, you said that you think that Michigan State will cover. 22.5 is the number. So what's your score prediction?
35-21 Michigan.
Okay. 35-21 Michigan. I'm going to go 45-10 Michigan. Hold on. Say that again. Your audio went down a little bit.
Oh, what I was saying is, you really think it's going to be a butt beating, and mind you, I want that. Matter of fact, I want a 52 zip or 60 zip. Like, I want to destroy them, but I'm always leaving room for, MSU being a pain in the butt, which they can be, you just never know.
The thing that I look at is, right, if you beat Penn State, would you drop on them 41? Right? And
I get it, but it's different. I understand what you're saying, but it's different. It's different when it's these two teams. And I would say this. Mel Tucker team, like, he keeps his foot on gas pedal all the time. And if there's anything, one bad trend I don't like that Michigan does is sometimes when the game is close to getting over, they tend to allow they play a little too vanilla on defense, and they give up some easy scores. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Probably majority of the game is going to be probably 35-14. At least it'll probably be close to what the number says it should be spread wise, but MSU will get, maybe a field goal or a touchdown, trying to keep their, just trying to score, and not giving up, and eventually the game will be over. You know, that's kind of how I look at it. But I'll put it this way: even though I'm saying 35-21, the game won't feel that close. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. If the final is 32 Michigan, 29 Michigan State, what would be your thoughts, Dre?
Well, I'll I'll have relief because it was that close. That means it was, you know, a barn burner, and you know, anxiety inducing for me, and I'm sure other Michigan fans. So I'll feel relief that we won, and I'll have concern as to what events took place that led to that. Because I would think if the score is that close, that a multitude of things happen, including Michigan hurting themselves and MSU probably having to do things outside of their character this year and playing above their level. So it'll be relief, but a bit of concern as to why it was that close in the first place.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be that close. You know, crazy things happen in rivalries, but I just don't think so. I think if your defense gives up 29, I would be absolutely floored on Saturday / Sunday when we get here. But
part of the reason is that, you know, I think because when Michigan does so well with running the football, you know, for one, they're going to keep that MSU offense off the field, right? It's not that they've been that prolific to begin with, so it's going to be limited possessions for MSU to even score that much. And even so, to be to get up and down the field, I just think that, you know, your MSU is going to play incredibly efficient on offense. They just haven't been able to do that. And part of the reason is also their offensive line has been really bad this year. So, you know, like Mark said, Peyton Thorne, for the most part, he's going to be improvising a lot, and he's going to probably take a lot of hits. I won't be surprised to see Peyton Thorne have to lead the game a little bit. He's going to take some hits this game. It's going to be a hard game.
This isn't the D line to try to your improvise needs to be 1, 2, 3. Reed's not there. Go north and south. Get out of there. That running around, Kyler Murray, Johnny Manziel stuff. You're going to get yourself hurt against this D line
as well, because it's a rivalry game, and I guarantee you, you know, I'm sure those MSU players will love to get their hands on the golden boy. You know, they will love to. Let's call it what it is. This is how it is. So, JJ's going to have to protect himself as well, which he's done a much better job with the last couple of weeks. And I'm happy for the kid. He's learning, and that's good. But he needs to continue to do that. Protect the football, make plays with your legs, make the throws. So you have to make the throws, and trust yourself. Because you want him to, I want the he threw a couple interceptions. He threw an interception versus Iowa, where I thought he forced a pass in the end zone, and I was okay with it because I want him to. That's one of the things, reason why he's starting. Right, he has that really good arm, and part of that is that you have to trust yourself, and sometimes that means taking chances in tighter windows. And sometimes you're gonna get burnt with it, but I want him to keep that mentality, but just know when to rein it in and when not to. You know.
Yeah. You'll never go broke making a profit. I think Joel Klatt says that on his show, and it's very true. You know, a 1 to 2 yard check down to Blake or Donovan Edwards can easily turn into a 10-yard first down. So just get the ball to those playmakers. You got plenty of them everywhere, so they'll be just fine. So anyway, that is it for us. We will be here Saturday late. Very late, but we'll see, because if Michigan runs the ball as much as, you know, we know they can, maybe that'll eat the clock up a little bit, so we're not up super late. You know, in case you guys don't know, I am an early bird when it comes to bed time, so if my eyes are a little red, I'm tired and probably have had a couple root beers as well. So we will see you guys Saturday after the game wraps up. We'll be here as you guys know it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please give us a thumbs up on your way out. Once again, thank you. We appreciate you all for tuning in, and we will see y'all on Saturday.
Go Blue, baby.
Peace.